So, thank you very much for coming. I'm here to tell you everything you need to know about the IoT. Right. I have been very lucky in my career to work on several very high-profile products. And what was really interesting, some of course not as successful as others, but I learned an awful lot in this process, and I felt that as a UX designer, that's where I come from, there really are only two types of products. Those that really push the boundaries and force us to think differently, and those that are just kind of filling in. They're just kind of doing what everybody else has already done. Like, for example, this really, really horrible car GPS system. We've all used systems like this. In fact, products like this make me kind of weep for humanity, because this is a product that's actually very obvious. It's been done many, many times before. There is no excuse for this to be horrible, and yet it is. And to me, it implies an awful lot about the culture of the company that produced it, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel to figure out how to make this work. My wife hates taking me whenever we get a new rental car because I complain so much about its design. But in fact, when I see products like this, I get mad because there's 1,000 things I could have done, you can do with the exact same hardware to fix it, and yet you can't quite do it. It makes me kind of feel a little bit like Doc Brown. You know, I'm this crazy adventure scientist, and I'm going to fix the world. But actually, my experience at Frog Design, I was a creative director at Frog Design for 2 years in San Francisco, taught me an awful lot about how we manage this process. Because everybody who came through the door, of course they wanted innovation. You know, Frog isn't cheap, right? And if you were going to do this, you have to have innovation. But we'd go through and we would do the workshops and the brainstorms, and we'd create all sorts of really lovely things, and we would scare them to death, right? And they wouldn't do most of it, because while everybody wants innovation, it turns out nobody wants any risk at all. And that's kind of frustrating. In fact, we had this running joke at Frog that we weren't in the design business. We were in the design therapy business. Because it's one thing to come up with a creative idea, it's another to work with that company, work with its culture, to get it to figure out how to ship the darn thing. Execution is important. So at first, when I saw this, I thought it was pretty straightforward. There's this risk continuum, and on one side, you've got the crazy science fiction dreamer, and on the other side, you've got what I would call the crackpot realist. Have you ever heard about crackpot realist? It's actually a term from a sociologist, C. Wright Mills. And he referred to the fact that some people are so afraid of the future that they create these crackpot theories about why it's perfectly fine to stay where we are. And of course, where we are, of course, on this spectrum varies quite a lot. And initially, I thought, well, I have to be way over here. I have to be way over here. I have to be way over here, and I want to be that Doc Brown character. And then I just started realizing that it's not that simple. It's actually, we need both. We need to have the crazy dreamers that push things forward, but we do need a little bit of that crackpot realist to make sure that we're safe, that we're protecting users, that we're not doing any harm. It's really kind of particle wave for the light to work. We really need to kind of have both sides. So I've gotten a little bit more nuanced as I get older. Funny how that works. But take, for example, this movie, Minority Report. I assume most of us have seen it or know about it. And it's of this fancy technology, fun movie. It's kind of a good litmus test to see how much of a technologist it is. Like, do you love this movie, or does this movie scare you? But the movie, of course, is meant to scare you. It's about a surveillance society, about technology kind of gone wrong. But do you remember this scene in the movie where Tom Cruise walks into the Gap, and this very friendly face comes up and says, "Hi there!" It's like how those assorted tank tops work out for you. Of course, if you notice, he's wearing a tank top. And this is meant to be creepy. This is meant to scare us, but admit it. How many marketers in this room thinks this would be a really awesome thing to be able to do, right? But because of the crackpot realism, we can't have that thought. We're embarrassed. We actually are kind of like, well, I can't really admit that, but man, it'd be cool if I could. Because we actually are now not able to talk about it. It's actually a reasonable thing to talk about, but we have to figure out how to break that out. How can we do this in a way that respects privacy, that protects the user, that gives them control? We need to have both, not just one or the other. I like this quote from Winston Churchill. It is a mistake to look too far ahead. Only one link of the chain of destiny can be handled at a time. Now, this doesn't mean that we just take tiny little incremental steps. What it's talking about is that so many visions of the future, and particularly Internet of Things, jump way out there in the front. And they say either it's awesome or it's terrible. And we kind of jump to these extremes. Neither one is good. Let's talk about the execution. Let's get this thing one step at a time and figure out how to make it work. Because to a certain extent, when we talk about the Internet of Things, all we can talk about is how it's this big, giant ball of awesome. It's going to be amazing. It's going to do everything. It doesn't help you. Talking about the Internet of Things is like making a product with the Internet of Things is like talking about making a product with electricity. It's a little vague. Let's take the problem apart, pull it in pieces, and then focus on one corner of it. Don't try to tackle the whole thing. If we wanted to talk about one little piece, what could we do? So, for example, let's just take one aspect of the fact that we have smart devices and processors are getting smaller and faster and cheaper. That's kind of obvious. That's going down. We all know that. A little bit more nuanced and more interesting is how networking has gone from a simple house Wi-Fi to maybe a car system where cars can communicate, or even simply a whole citywide network. That's going in the opposite direction. So these are two very broad and possibly oversimplistic categories about the IoT. So let's just call one smart devices and the other one smart networks. They're both good, they're both huge, there's a ton to talk about it, but let's break this ball of awesome down. Let's just take networks and just get rid of them for a bit. Not because they're wrong, but because I just want to focus on a simpler problem. So let's talk about devices. Let's break them up into two pieces and talk about user-facing devices, being able to control this camera or the room lighting, or something more like sensors, the autonomous things that control the heating or the cooling of a house. They're both, again, huge topics and can be talked about, but let's just get rid of those sensors for now and just focus on this corner, this idea of user-facing devices. This is where an awful lot is happening right now, and we should be talking a little bit more about how we tackle that problem. Because it's really interesting about if we were to take this idea that came up with Minority Report, the ability to interact with something in a new place, in a new location. It would be amazing. It would open up so much type of new interaction styles. In tourism, for example, you could walk up to a statue, and yes, there would be the little sign, but imagine being able to open up your phone and getting a video or a tour guide or an audio tour of what's happening. Or in transit, being able to know exactly what bus that you're on and being able to make a choice as to what stop you want to get off at. Or mapping, as opposed to a generic map for the whole world. I want to have the map that this stadium has. It's more like a map with attitude, can give you more information. And yes, if you must, we can talk about tank tops. And we can talk about retail. But one of the frustrations I have is that one of the key IoT technologies we've been talking about recently has been beacons. And a lot of work has been gone in. A lot of companies have spent time in beacons. And what do? All they can do, almost every beacon thing I have ever seen, is about making sure the user gets a coupon when they walk in the store. Good God. This is what we're spending all of our brilliant minds doing, is giving people digital coupons? I mean, come on. A sure sign of intellectual fatigue or of just a tired attitude is that you don't use tomorrow's technology to solve yesterday's problems. Let's try to come up with new values. And yet, every time someone takes a look at a beacon technology, I can guarantee you it's either tracking the user in the store to calculate dwell time or to somehow figure out how to give them a coupon. Now, this idea about being able to interact with someone in a retail space is not new at all. Do you guys remember QR codes? Those cute little things that we all like to hate now? You know, they've been tried many, many times. And they haven't really worked out as well as they would have thought. Have you seen this helpful flowchart? Should I use a QR code? No. But what if, oh my God, no. Because, I mean, this has been going on for an awful long time. I keep getting engineers telling me about QR codes are great. I'm like, have you used one? I mean, I love this one, and this is a Tumblr account. Pictures of people scanning QR codes. No posts yet. They're a good idea, but like the GPS system, they were just poorly executed. It's not like it's wrong, we just have to figure out a better way of doing it. And besides, we have gotten, because of smart devices, something a lot more interesting than just simply static web pages. We're now talking to smart devices. We've got smart televisions and smart vending machines and smart buses. They're all doing things. And what are they doing today? They're not using QR codes. Every one has their own application. Because that's kind of the only choice we have right now, is to be able to do that. But that kind of works today because we're experimenting and we have a few things. But what about 6 months from now when we have a few more devices? Or a year from now when we got 18 devices? I mean, like, where does this stop? If we believe in Moore's law at all, this is going to become completely impossible in a very short period of time. This is where, now, I will tell you, I work on the Chrome team. I'm involved in the web. But this is where the superpower of the web can kind of help us. It's interaction on demand. With just a tap, you can be to any website in the world in seconds, assuming it's not loading too much JavaScript ad networking stuff, but I digress. So the intention is that the web is quick, and it's fast, and it's light. You'd think that might be useful in this situation. Because the last 25 years, the web has evolved and done really amazing things, but we've focused on this inside white rectangle, what we call the DOM, the Document Object Model. It can do WebGL, three-dimensional type things. It can do Canvas and just do videos and all sorts of amazing things. But we really haven't focused on this little piece here, the URL bar. It's like, really, we tell people that, well, if you want to go to my website, just type in www.cnn.com. We've taken the most amazing rendering engine on the planet, and we've strapped a damn DOS prompt on top of it. That's how you use the web? It's like, wait, you have a mobile phone here, right? This is no different than the desktop from 25 years ago. It's about time the web actually truly became mobile. So in a sense, what we've kind of figured and played with is that the web needs a discovery service. If you walk into a space and you've got, say, a bus or a vending machine or a parking meter, they're all broadcasting a URL like a QR code, but it's executed much better so that when you walk into the space, you can discover those things nearby. Now, just showing a list of URLs is possible, but it'd be so much more interesting if you had a system that would find them and give you a little icon and a title and a snippet so the user would know what they're looking at. And then when they tapped on it, you just take them to the website. Now, that's really it. It's not complicated. Sometimes the most powerful ideas are the tiniest ones. We just want to be able to get you to a web page as quickly and easily as you can. Let me give you an example of how this would work. So here's something we built. It's a parking meter. We're now pulling down on Chrome the ability to see that there's a parking meter here. We found the URL and we're on the website. So our little scanning is done. We're now just using the web. And then when you hit this button, you go up, you're putting time on the meter, and you hit pay, and off you go. And this is all done through the web. That's the kind of experience we're talking about. This tiny little discovery of a URL gives you this ability. Now, every time I show this video to people in San Francisco, they all start crying a little bit. Because we have smart parking meters in San Francisco and nobody uses them because the app is so unbelievably difficult to use. And now I cheated a little bit on this video because I didn't show you signing up for the payment flow, right? So the first time you would use it. But the point is, people always say, well, of course, you'd be using Google Pay, right? I'm like, no, I don't care. It's the web. Use whatever you want to. Use Bitcoin. I don't care. But the point is, once you sign up for that payment flow, it is the web, and it does remember, so it is that flow. It really can be that simple. Of course, you probably want to do a little bit more protection and maybe have a passcode, but the point is, it's not that bad. It's pretty simple. So, in effect, the idea about the physical web is trying to bridge these two devices. You want to be able to walk up to a device and use it, and then be able to just kind of use it quite quickly. It's really meant to be open like the web. It's really just a web page. But we always think of a web page like this giant portal, you know, like CNN.com or some big newspaper. We're flipping the problem on its head. Instead of going to Coke.com, you're actually going to every possible vending machine of Coke.com. So it'd be Coke.com/7643R. Or something like that. It completely flips the problem on its head. And the intention here is that you want to be able to walk up and use something quickly and easily. But here's the most important piece. It's no interruptions. People always assume that if you're going to have a system that is going to give it to you, that as you walk into a mall, your phone is just going to go crazy in your pocket. Well, you can't do that. This will only show up if you pull the phone out, unlock your phone, and then pull down the notification manager. You have to respect the user's privacy. And so we do this. So if you walk into a place with 15 of these things, you'll get one silent notification. Now, this does mean that users have to understand it a little bit more. You just can't foist this on people automatically. But we feel this is the right way, the respectful way to talk about it. Make people understand it first, and then have them ask for it. Don't push it on them. So how does this work? We're using effectively, in many cases, this will be built into the product. But we have a little device like this, a beacon, that's broadcasting. And it puts the URL, the web address, inside and just broadcasts it out. And it just broadcasts over and over, continuously. And then we have a little scanner built into the phone that then finds it. And when the phone comes by, it kind of goes, oh, hey, let me show it to you. Now, it's really important to understand that we're not sending a special ID that gets looked up by a Google server. We're sending a URL to that web page. We've designed this to be like the web. It's open like the web, so it has no central server required. Now, we also get an awful lot of questions about protecting people, because this has got to be done in a very privacy-specific way. I can get into a lot more technical detail if you want, but the beacons broadcast in a way so that they can't tell who is receiving it. The beacons can't know that you're nearby. So we do broadcast only. The website has no idea that you're there. The phone, when it looks for the URL, uses a proxy service so that it basically gets all that information for you. Then if the user taps on it, well, then of course you're going to the website. They're opting in. But the website can't track you if you just happen to walk by. And the fact that the scanner, which we have built into Chrome for iOS, and we also have it in Android, that scanner is itself a central bottleneck, but everything that we do is open source. So there are many companies now that have written their own scanners that use their own servers. So if you don't like us, use them. The whole thing is designed to be built independently of any one company. That's really important to create trust. And this is all an open source project. We're one of the most popular GitHub things at Google, and we've got an awful lot of companies using it. And a lot of different products have come out. We initially came out with our own application. You can actually find the physical web app right now and download it and use it, but that's mostly for developers. It's in Chrome. It's actually in Opera beta right now. It's in the Android operating system right now. In fact, if you have Android right now and you have Bluetooth and data, you'll get the prompt. We have a couple of beacons broadcasting, and they'll show up right now on your phone. On iOS, you'll get it if you have Chrome installed. And then we have a bunch of other companies now that are going to be doing it, so it's coming right now. My point is it's shipping right now. You can do it. But Scott, really? The web? That's so boring. Because we've gotten through this phase over the last couple of years where it's like, apps are awesome, the web sucks, what are you guys doing? And yes, around 2009, 2010, it was pretty clear that apps were kind of taking over the world, but it's not really turning out that well for apps these days. Have you guys had clients that insisted on having their own app? Just curious. How'd that go for you, right? It's really hard to get people to install your app these days, and there's a certain amount of app fatigue. You're not going to pass something in a mall and kind of go, yeah, sure, I'll download that app. No, they just will not do that. So let me give you another example. Let me step back a little bit. The other issue is that because we're doing this tiny, thin sliver, we're just discovering URLs, we're just discovering web pages. The web has continued to evolve, and it's gotten really cool, and it makes us look really good, but we don't deserve it. The web has just continued to improve. So let me show you this example. It's a restaurant buzzer. So you walk up to a deli, and it's broadcasting, so you see Bob's Deli up here. The physical web is now done, and you're on a web page that says, hey, there's 8 people in front of you. Do you want to take a number? Yeah, sure, your number's 8445. You then put the phone in your pocket. The web has registered for a push notification. It's a new technology on the web, so when the web server wants to get a hold of you, it actually will vibrate in your pocket, wake you up, and then tell you that it's your turn. So you know those restaurants that have those big plastic things that vibrate with the LEDs, right? Okay, they're gone forever, right? You just replace it with one $5 beacon and you're done. So that is simply a web technology that's built on top of the physical web, and it's simply built, all browsers have that now. So the other thing to talk about, I'm going to get a little geeky on you, when you put a URL in these beacons, you can actually have a shortener like goo.gl or tiny.cc or bit.ly. There's many companies out there that do that. But what we found out is that by putting a URL shortener, you can have it change. So the beacon is broadcasting the same URL, but you can then choose. So one company actually does it. So in the morning, it broadcasts the breakfast menu, and the afternoon lunch, and in the afternoon something different. The beacon is still broadcasting the same thing, but it can redirect you. And what's really cool is what you do in the web, you call a 404, you basically redirect it to nothing, like x.y. Well, there's nowhere for it to go. So when we see that URL, we kind of go, no, nothing to show. So it disappears. You effectively turn the beacon off. What this means is that you can do all of your cloud management, all of the management of your beacons in the cloud. We didn't even think about this. It's kind of obvious, actually, afterwards, but it's a whole companies have built beacons around this technology. It makes things very flexible. Here's another example using another web technology called Web Bluetooth. It's a little toy that uses Bluetooth, and it has its own application. But what we do is we had it broadcast a beacon, so we see the physical web. We then pick it. It's called Little Bro. And then when we pick it, again, the physical web is over. But we now load a web page that uses JavaScript. And there's a JavaScript library that lets you speak Bluetooth. So you connect to it. This is actually a debug screen that'll go away. And we now have a joystick. And we're now driving this toy across the floor with no application of any kind. The web is doing that. And again, the physical web is this tiny little thing. We're just giving you a web page. It's just a really awesome web page, right? That lets you drive around. Now, this is not going through the cloud. These are commands that are going directly to that. Here's my other example. Here is a pill bottle. Now, this is a fake pill bottle with fake pills in it and a fake prescription, but I put my name on it. And it has a tiny little beacon in it that's basically broadcasting out, effectively, the prescription. Right? And so check your pill schedule. And so when you click on it, it loads it up. Now, we're talking to a company right now that's making beacons that are going to only cost 75 cents that last for about 4 or 5 months that broadcast this. But a couple things to keep in mind. One is the web knows your predicted language. It knows if you speak German or English or Spanish. So that instead of having that 18-page folding thing with all those different languages, it just shows you the language that you want. Second, there's no reason why you can't have a login to make sure that only you can see this data, to make sure that you protect people, so that once you log in and you get the cookie, then you are protected, and then you can see that data yourself. The other thing, of course, is that you can make the radius very small, so you'd have to be very close to it to see it. So again, showing simple, lightweight ways of doing this. The other thing I want to mention from a hardware point of view is the hardware is changing so rapidly. This beacon is now 3 months old. The battery in here lasts for about 3 years. The new version of this beacon that we're going to be shipping in about 2 weeks, 2 months, will last for 10 years on the exact same battery. So the power is getting really, really low. But more importantly, both Nordic and ARM are big semiconductor manufacturers. They're producing a new version of this chip that will use 1 volt versus 3 volt. What that means is that you can use a single photovoltaic cell, and then this thing can run forever and never need a battery again. You need to have it be light, but of course, let's be clear, we do not want to be encouraging devices that throw away billions of batteries a year. The ultimate end goal is to make things that just never need batteries again. So this technology is changing very rapidly. Let me give you another example of the kinds of things that you can build, because people don't really realize how flexible this is. In this case, we wanted to have a voting screen, but instead of having it be really boring, like question 6, yes, no. We wanted to make something more dynamic. So in this particular case, we have a board that shows the current trend. Oh, we're showing the same thing. Here's physical web. There's physical web pages nearby. And we're clicking on Welcome to the Voting Room. We click on that, and now we're going to a web page that has just an up or a down. It's super simple. And as you tap on it, the bubble flips to the top. And as you slide, do you see how it slides all over the place? We intentionally did this so that you could have fun. We wanted you to be able to go up and down and cause crazy because it made it a little bit more interactive. And then, of course, as people vote, you could see what would happen. It made it very lightweight and dynamic, and people really enjoy being obnoxious with this thing, but it's kind of cool. And again, a simple, lightweight experience, no downloading, no nothing. Here's my final example. We really wanted to take advantage of the fact that people liked to do selfies. So here is a photo wall, and it's a little browser. You're going to get really tired of seeing this, physical web pages nearby. And then you picked the photo wall. And it actually shows you a little mini version of the wall on your phone. And as you click on that, it zooms in. Because the first thing we wanted to be able to do is to people walk up to this thing and say, well, who left their photo? What's it like? Let me see. So its first experience is just to browse. But if you wanted to, you can also take the camera, poke it around, and let's see, what's he going to do? I think he's going to take a picture of the plant. Here, take a picture of the plant. Okay. And then when you take the photo, you can then push it to the wall. So again, you can walk by, take a selfie, and push it up here, and then leave, and then never have to see it again if you want to. Again, lots of simple interactions. The whole reason I'm showing you all these examples is that you guys can have an idea of how these systems can work. Because the thing that really got us really surprised about this is that the URLs plus the web are just so damn flexible. It allows so many things to happen. And I'm not trying to get into this web versus native argument. They're both fine. It's kind of a false dichotomy. About 4 years ago, in fact, when I was at Frog, I wrote an article called Mobile Apps Must Die. That was a mistake. It was a little bit too clickbaity, and it got a lot of press, but it kind of missed the point. I just wanted people to think a little bit differently about this kind of stuff. Because the issue to me is that the physical web enables interaction when apps just aren't practical. We're not trying to replace apps. We're just trying to do apps in very lightweight, simple cases. So how do I start? Whenever people talk about the physical web, we always say, well, wait a second, start with a web page. That's what you have to do, and everything else follows. And I want to quickly show you 4 ways in which it can work. When we did Google I/O, our big conference, we basically just took a bunch of beacons and scattered them all over, and we just sent them to the schedule. That was it, just so that people could see where it was. And we flooded the area with it. Didn't tell anybody, and people started using it. And by the end of the day, everybody was using it. It was kind of fun. Simple, lightweight, but effective. Then the flip side of this is single point. Transport for London did this with 100 buses as a test case. Each bus had a URL that would just say, you're on bus 53. Here's the next 12 stops. Which one do you want to get off at? And you'd click on it, and then it would just simply vibrate in your pocket to remind you to get off. Again, a brand offering value to users. Now, below that, they ended up having an ad, but only after they helped you first, right? And of course, my pill bottle is the same way. It's simply a single device that you can kind of interact with. The third one I'm calling is breadcrumbs, where imagine that you're on a tour along a water area and you just have a whole series of beacons along the way just to lead people from one experience to another, some kind of tourist-like experience. And the other one I would call concierge, and that would be similar to what I did with Bob's Deli. You actually go to a web page, which you then sign up for, and then it then helps you and reminds you. So in this case, we warned you in 10 minutes that it was your turn in line. But in a week, it could tell you that your product has arrived in the store. Or in 3 weeks, your appointment is up. So there's a little bit more interaction that can happen after you've loaded the page. And then the final one that's a little bit more aggressive is this idea called remote control, where you can control devices right in front of you. This is possible today, actually, using JavaScript Bluetooth. It's available in Chrome, and it's coming into other browsers. So what I'm trying to leave you with is basically 5 archetypes. These are just ways in which you can use this technology that's practical and simple today. So my job here today is to kind of be like Doc Brown. I'm just trying to take the 2 different cables and hook them up so that the power can flow between these 2 things. I really don't want to leave you with this idea that I'm selling you a Google technology. I love the fact that our Google product. I work for Google, obviously, but I work for the Chrome team. And we're just a bunch of, like, what's probably a good word for us? We're kind of like techno-communists. Is maybe a good way of putting it. We just want the web to be better, right? This can't work if it's a Google product. It will only succeed if we as a community want it to succeed. That's why we designed this so that Google doesn't have to be involved, right? It's just simply part of the web. But at the same time, we want people to think about it and play with it and then to push it and give us some ideas. So it's just simply a new technology we're playing with, and it's that tiny little corner of the IoT that we think is our first best step to make this work. I got one tweet. Awesome. Yes. So anyway, I'm going to be here all day. I'd like to ask a few more questions. Answer some questions, so please grab me afterwards. So thank you very much.